For our next interview, I want to bring on Jason. Jason is the founder of Airstack. If you're at the hackathon, you're going to definitely hear about it. If you have been a part of the hackathon, you've probably already heard about it. But we're not going to talk about what Airstack is. We're going to talk about what it was like to start a company in crypto, especially coming in from a lot of startup experience from doing things outside of crypto. We're going to have an amazing conversation around all the things that goes on into building a company. So let's bring on Jason on stage to talk about starting a startup in Web3.
Hi, everyone.
So, Jason, we've known each other since before you started Airstack. And when we met, you were at a company, and you started a company called OST. So I want to start off by actually having you tell all of us about what that company was and what you wanted to do and when did all that happen?
Yeah, so first of all, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. And the first company I founded was a company called Social Median back in 2008. And the idea of Social Median was enabling basically the newsfeed before we had Facebook newsfeed and Twitter timelines. And so I've always been enamored with social and in networks. I had a unicorn e-commerce company called Fab.com, which actually had a big development center in Pune. So I spent a lot of time in India over the years. And in 2015, I read the Ethereum white paper, and I was like, this is it. This is like the next phase of the internet. We can program smart contracts. We can do programmable money. We can start to build the financial internet. Start to reshape applications. And so I became obsessed with this. And so I decided to start a company in 2016, which the intent of the company was to build the first decentralized social network. And
2016.
2016. And we called it PEPO, P-E-P-O. And we first built a centralized kind of messaging community app. And then we said, okay, now we're going to start to decentralize this. Before we even launched it to users, we just got people's feedback on it, they liked it. And then we just realized that, wow, we were way too early. And so we pivoted the entire business into something called OST, which was Open Simple Token. And we spent 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 writing protocols for building layer 2 application platforms. We wrote a smart contract wallet way before anyone knew what account abstraction was. We actually were the first to write something that you could bridge tokens from a layer 1 to a layer 2 and then use the layer 2 and then reclaim back on layer 1 through Merkle proofs, but way before anyone was ready to use this stuff. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So what happened after 2019?
Yeah, well, one is COVID hit, right? And what happened with COVID hit was we were finally, first of all, I got to back up. I'm like a total ship it and iterate kind of guy. Like my entire ethos is get something out there as quick as possible, get people to touch it and give you feedback. And it was frankly kind of depressing for me being in Web3 in 2016 to 2019 because we were building stuff that no one was using. I was completely, against everything I stood for. And we actually relaunched PEPO. We launched it as like a version of it at I think it was Waterloo in 2019.
Yeah,
we launched
later
it
19.
at DevCon in Osaka. We showed it off, won an UX award, but no one cared. It was just way too soon. But so when COVID hit, we actually were just on the cusp of actually going to be doing some onboarding. We actually had a deal with a company called BrewDog, which is a brew pub with thousands of locations around the world, and we were going to roll out a loyalty program for them based on our technology. We were working with Microsoft on a bunch of things with in-person events. We were working with Grab to launch Grab has actually done some of this now, but we had actually worked on the first kind of iteration of a Grab in Singapore kind of wallet for loyalty points when you were riding cars. And then COVID hit, and everything we were working on was in person. And it was just it's not going to happen.
Total shutdown.
Not going to happen. And so actually what happened was one of our investors said, hey, you guys are awesome at building product. Would you build a virtual fitness platform? So we did that for a year and a half, and then sold that and then jumped right back into Web3 after that. Yeah.
That's an incredible last 6 years. What was kind of the obvious lesson from starting a lot of the social stuff back in 2017 to kind of 19? You kind of said it's early, but what kind of gave you that impression that, hey, this may not be the right time?
Yeah, I'd say, like, first of all, there's for myself at least, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's no worse feeling than being right but being too early. Like we, so much of the stuff that we wrote and that we developed back then has actually made itself into other products today. There's bits and pieces of OpenST and Polygon and Near. I've seen it in like the Cello white paper. If you dig in, there's actually pieces of our like the way that we define that you would set up like a layer 2 and first a sidechain. So that's satisfying in some ways, but it's also sad that we didn't get to do it, right? And I'd say, like, you know, one of the things for me is like I vowed to, I never want to build that way again. I always want to be building with a customer in mind and building product that people want to use and want to use right now. And that's really something that I've decided firmly is something I'm always going to be doing from now on.
The startup world has an analogy around, like,
say it again.
So the startup world has an analogy around kind of vitamins versus painkillers, and kind of it seems like being early sort of feels like a vitamin too, but you don't know if it's actually that or you're just early, and maybe it would have worked exactly the way you thought 2 years later.
Yeah.
What then kind of led to Airstack?
Yeah. So my co-founders and I, we were same co-founders as OpenST. We knew we wanted to build something in Web3. We really, you know, we're just fundamental believers in the power of these technologies. And we got back together thinking about it at the end of 2021. And we said, okay, if we were to go back and solve one of the problems that we identified back when we were building OpenST, and validate that first, that it's actually a real problem worth solving. If we could find something like that we can then go spend, you know, the next 10 years of our lives on, that's what we wanted to do. And one of the things, so we, you know, batted around ideas for a few months, but we kind of kept going through, like, what were the pain points? What were the problems that we saw developers going through? And the one thing we kept coming back to is what we saw was that, at least back in like 2019 and 2020, we saw that when people were starting to build dApps, obviously the technology was all very early, but what we saw was that everyone was basically building the same infrastructure over and over again, especially if they needed to connect their dApps to any data or information on chain, or it integrate off-chain data, whether it's from IPFS or elsewhere. Everyone was building the same exact infrastructure and going through all the hassles and headaches and pain to do so. And so we decided to see if that was still a problem. So we went out and interviewed hundreds of developers, end of 2021, early 2022, and we really said, all right, what are your biggest frustrations? What are the things that are stopping you from going faster, from building better applications? And what we kept hearing back from them was all these, well, same thing of like, well, I have to spend so much time indexing, building a database to analyze the data. I have to figure out how to get, data from here. And then we also heard was that as more and more protocols, dApps, and blockchains become usable, that the problem for developers just becomes harder and harder and harder. That it's one thing for a developer to say, okay, I'm just going to build on one protocol and I'm just going to learn the in and outs of, let's say, Polygon, and I'll keep up with their reorgs and I'll keep up with everything I need to on that chain. But once you start going to the next one and the next one and the next one, it was like almost impossible for them to keep up. So then we had like this spark, like the moment of, okay, if we could be this infrastructure layer for all of these application developers who want to be able to build apps faster, easier, make them more composable by integrating data from across blockchains, across dApps, across protocols, we could help them go from, a year's worth of headaches and heartaches and AWS bills to, snap your fingers, integrate it, and keep moving. Then we would be both a painkiller and a vitamin, and frankly, some speed as well. And that was the goal that we set out to do. Yeah.
That's an interesting analogy. That's a tweet quote right there. Well, so maybe I'll ask this more directly for everybody to have a better understanding too. What is Airstack now?
Yeah. So we built that, right? So what we did is we spent 2022 building this infrastructure layer API platform for developers to very easily integrate on-chain and off-chain data into their applications, to do so cross-dApp, cross-blockchain, at literally snapping your fingers. Our mission, we set out is just to be developers' best friend and really understand what developers need to help them build better apps and move faster. We launched a private beta in January of this year. We had about 180 developers in the private beta. We ran it for January, February, March. We got their feedback on it, iterated. During that time, we also built an AI engine because we realized that our APIs that we had built that enabled this kind of cross kind of querying were uniquely suited for training an LLM. And so we actually went from a developer having to, let's say, spend a couple days or a week learning Airstack's APIs, previously 6 months to learn how to index all this stuff. We went to literally within milliseconds with our AI engine, you can query and say, for instance, show me everyone at Pragma who also attended a previous Pragma, their ENS name, their forecaster profile, their bio, get their photo from Lens, and et cetera, et cetera. You can do all that in our AI in a matter of milliseconds and plug it right into your app with a JSON file. That's the output. And it's changing lives, frankly. I mean, it's like developers are able to build in a day or two what they would have to build, taking them weeks and months before.
I mean, that's a super powerful recommendation, just generally kind of coming out of the box.
Yeah.
This private beta was Q1. You kind of went out there publicly in April.
Yeah.
What's going to happen over the last 9 months?
Yeah. So we launched at ETHGlobal, Tokyo. That was very purposeful. My own experience back in the space in 2018, 2019, I found the ETHGlobal hackathons and events to be the best in the business for serious builders. And so we set out a strategy of, okay, we're going to ship fast, iterate, kind of go through this process. And we actually signed up to do every ETHGlobal hackathon this year. This is my 7th. And
it's also my 7th.
But what that forced us to do, though, so we did Tokyo in April, got feedback, but then we did Lisbon in May, got feedback, iterated. We did Waterloo in June, got feedback, iterated. We did Paris in July. We did another hackathon, New York in September, and then we're here. And so it caused us to have these really rapid development cycles of put the product in front of developers, get their feedback, do it again and again and again. And around July timeframe, we just saw magic in the bottle hit, right?
Were you able to trace what was that moment?
Yeah, what it was we built something. So we have all this integrating all this data from across blockchains, and we built this abstraction layer on top of it that we call the Onchain graph, which enables you to literally see here's the people that Kartik has the most in common across all of his on-chain behaviors for the last 6 years, and to do so not just with a single wallet, but across multiple wallets that you might have used over the years and kind of associate them. And what happened was, true story, Shane at XMTP saw it, and he's like, this is the future. This is what every XMTP app needs to have as the address book, the contacts in every XMTP app. Started introducing us to everyone who's building XMTP. Then Stani from Lens did the same thing. Dan from Farcaster did the same thing. And the net output is that in the last 8 months, we've done over 1 billion API calls.
Amazing.
1 billion.
1 billion.
And 700 million of them were last month.
Okay.
Yeah.
We call that product market fit.
Yeah. And it's to be honest, it's humbling, but I feel like we've earned it because we've worked our asses off to do it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. This is an incredible milestone. Yeah. And that's just you just getting started.
And we're really
grows exponentially from here.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you do something like that, now we have right now 490 customers, right? Which is crazy, right? And they ask us for so much, and our whole ethos is around listening to them and finding out what devs need. And so now the hardest thing for us is actually prioritizing what we do next, because the worst thing a startup can do is lose focus. Yeah.
So one other interesting thing I just realized from your last answer is that it seems like a very common theme here is recommendation and kind of seeing social behaviors being represented and queryable. Yeah. You did that with OST, you did that with Peppo, and now with the recommendation here for Airstack. Seems like Web3 social is still top of mind for you.
Yeah.
So maybe my question will be, now that you kind of focus more on a developer-centric product, how do you define Web3 social?
Yeah. So yes, I'm very obsessed with social, but I have a different view on Web3 social than I think most people do. Most people, when they think about Web3 social, they think about kind of like within the Web2 construct of there's a social network, and the difference with Web3 may be that parts of it are decentralized. So they think about the Farcaster network or the Lens network or maybe CyberConnect or something else, and they kind of look at it as okay, it's a social network that's built on Web3 kind of rails, right? And my view is completely different. My view is Ethereum is the social network, and we're entering a world where people don't participate in one platform. That Ethereum and all the EVMs permeate when you use your wallet and you earn, let's say, POAPs from attending events. There's over 7 million POAPs that have been collected now, over 6 years of data of the events that people have been to. That's a social network. That's a social fabric that you can start to connect people based on where they've been or who they've been with. When you join a DAO or whether you participate in NFT communities, that's a social network. Now, the fact that you also have, let's say, use certain dApps, there's people who also use those dApps, so we can kind of look at that and build social networks and inferences based on that as well. And so I think we're entering a phase, and this is like the on-chain graph that we built is really kind of feeding into this. We're entering a phase where social is an identity and kind of recommendations is something that's going to be permeating across all of Ethereum. And so it's not going to be that you just like, yeah, you might join a social networking platform where you have like a friends list and a follows list. But I think the exciting thing is that next layer on top of it of like everywhere you go with Ethereum, you can have recommendations and personalization if you want to, based on your on-chain behaviors, just served up to you from the start. And this is such a big departure from Web 2. In Web 2, there's no way you could build an application like developers are doing with Airstack. There's no way you could build an application, for instance, that I'm going to take the social graph of Instagram.
Of someone else's data.
Yeah, and what someone else is doing on TikTok and like what their Spotify listing behaviors and their, Flipkart purchases and put it all in a single app. You can't do it. They won't let you. But in Web 3, you can. It's just been really hard until now. And what that enables now is you have these whole new kind of genre of applications where they can leverage all of this to create something where there's no cold start. There's a friend list from the beginning. There's recommendations and things you can do right away. And I think this is just going to explode app development. And I think it's going to explode user experiences where this is going to be a catalyst for seeing more and more people building better, richer apps, and then more people entering the ecosystem. And I'll say one last thing on this is people are always like, well, when it's easier to use, more people will join, Web 3. And I say no, when there's actually reasons for people to join, they will hop through millions of hoops, and but things will get easier along the way. Yeah. And so when we build better applications that give better experiences than what people can do Web 2, all the rest will follow. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the build something people want mantra, right? I do want to come back to actually starting startups here. As you kind of thought about Airstack from kind of all those learnings from OST, what are some lessons that you are now applying when kind of redoing everything from Airstack versus that you thought were potential challenges during OST?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it just comes back to making sure you're building something that people want, something that they need, and the people that they're willing to pay for. And I think all too often in Web3, because there's a lot of we're building frontier technologies in many cases, that it's easy to lose sight of that. And I think if you lose sight of that too long, it's very easy to get it wrong. And we got to get out of this cycle, in my opinion, of having lots and lots of Web3 applications who build really interesting science projects, but then go under after a couple of years because they can't find product market fit. And instead get back to really focusing on how do we build products that people really, really need and really are willing to pay for. That's what we do every day at Airstack. Yeah, I tell our team, our job is to talk to customers every day, understand what their frustrations are, and to build them, painkillers, vitamins, and speed. I'm big pharma now.
This is big pharma indeed. Yeah. Maybe on the controversial side, what about having a token?
I'm not saying no, but I'm also not focused on it. And I will say...
Maybe what are some lessons learned kind of managing that from OST?
Yeah. So at OST, we had a token. We were one of the very, very few token projects back in the day. So we launched our token in 2017, where we had a functioning version of the protocol first before we launched the token.
That's rare for the people in audience.
Yeah. And there was a use case for the token in the protocol. But now the problem was just that being a use case wasn't enough because it was going to be years before there was actually a product that needed the token from a kind of end user standpoint. And I'd say that, so what am I, people ask me, what do I think about tokens today? And I actually think that the SEC in the US, the Howey test is actually really right. And I think it's really right. So the Howey test is that there has to be utility before you sell something, otherwise it's a security, right? Like a token. And I think that's right because what happens is if you sell a token and the token is going into the hands of investors and speculators, and the actual real reason for the token to be used has not been clearly defined and mechanics haven't worked out yet, then the token is going to fail. It's very hard to overcome that. Now, it might succeed from a price standpoint as speculators just bid it up for a while, but of actually serving the purpose that it's supposed to have inside of an application is not going to work. Yeah.
Maybe let's kind of go back on thinking about building a bigger business. So before OST, you were doing Fab.
Yes.
Tell us about what Fab is.
Yeah.
What were you able to accomplish and what happened?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Fab.com was a e-commerce marketplace. We launched it in 2011. It went rocket ship overnight. We were at one point one of the fastest growing companies on earth. We were a unicorn within 18 months, did 150 million in sales in the first 12 months of the company. And things were going great. And then about 2.5 years in, Amazon just crushed us, like literally crushed us. And when I mean like Amazon crushed us, at the beginning of Fab, we would find independent designers and feature them on our marketplace. And it was typically about 45 days before they would appear on Amazon. And by the third year of the business, within 48 hours of us finding a designer, they were on Amazon with free shipping, free returns, in the warehouse and everything. And we just couldn't keep up with it. And it was like it was painful. I mean, because we had both the exhilarating ride of becoming a unicorn super fast and building a product that people loved and working with designers and helping change their lives, to then really struggling to be relevant after that. Yeah.
And that's always tough. And it's even harder when you were able to accomplish that a decade ago, not just kind of because everything is part of a bigger economy now recently. How do you think about competition in Web3?
Yeah. I would say, like, even with that experience with Fab, like, I love building products, and what motivates me every day is our team trying to build something that people love to use, and making a dent out there with something that helps move the industry forward. And we really do believe in decentralization and the possibilities of this technology. I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
What's kind of a good way to think about competition here? Like, are we at the same scale where like we have to be cutthroat, or are we still kumbaya?
You will have competition, and at a certain point, you've got to do better than your competition, or you won't exist. I'd say we are fiercely customer centric and also fiercely, competitive in terms of we want to be the best in the space. And like my founding team and our vision here is to be a company for 20 years that's having a major impact in this space. And so we have to constantly think about, what could possibly derail that. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Let's kind of switch gears to building products, but for developers.
Oh, sorry.
Last couple of companies you've done have been more on the consumer and social friendly kind of individual retail side. Now, engineers are your customers, and working with engineers is sometimes a binary situation.
Yeah.
What kind of have you noticed building products for developers?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm a product manager at heart. I am deeply technical in the product. I've been building products for so long, and so it's passion of mine, and I really want to see developers build better products in this space in particular. I would say that being in this industry in the previous bear market and seeing just the amount of energy and dedication that developers put in to try to building things that are even many times too soon, like, really inspired me. And I saw the real need to help developers build better, faster in this space. And so said, okay, if we can provide some of our consumer product mentality towards that could be a good thing as well. And so our team, when we build things, we really try to pay attention on both building a good developer product, but also developer experience, so like a DevX, as well as building no-code versions for people who maybe don't know how to code and can touch our products. So that's something. And then we wanted really to build something in this space that we would get immediate feedback on, and I think developers is like where to be when it comes to that. Now, that said, so I don't want to do a commercial here, but if you go to Airstack, we have this thing called Airstack Explorer, which is a no-code version of our tools. It's built on the APIs, and it gets 5,000 to 10,000 visits every day for some reason. People like it, so it's a product.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Are there things that you think will be beneficial for other founders who are building DevTools that they can kind of impart on them?
Yeah, I would just say, like, make sure you're building something that people actually need. I am obsessed with customer interviews, and the one question that I constantly ask people is, what frustrates you the most? Because if I can figure out what you're struggling with, then I can try to build you something to help you get past that. And if you're building something as a developer in the space, try as much as possible to avoid building things just because you have a hunch or that you think it might move the needle. Validate. And if you ever want help thinking about how to do customer interviews, give me a holler. Happy to help.
Amazing. Well, let's try to kind of wrap this up. So there's a lot of stuff that you've kind of been through, and a lot of it is good. This is not meant to be like this is just an observation, and I'm finally glad to hear that Airstack is kind of meeting the success and people are actually trying it, and you're actually becoming a critical layer in that infrastructure of enabling a lot more Web3 applications. Some of this has already been kind of said from you already. So aside from that vitamin painkiller speed line, any other parting advice to founders who are thinking about building in the Web3 ecosystem now in the current market?
Yeah, I would say that you're lucky right now to be building Web3 because we're about to see so much of this stuff become usable. And I would say the biggest takeaway that I have from the ETHGlobal hackathons this year is developers are now able to build complete applications in a weekend. And it used to be that you'd build like a little POC that still needed years of work to bring to market.
You would shout at your computer for the first day and then building begins the next day.
Yeah. And so for instance, like now when Airstack, when we're judging projects, we tell everyone no videos, it has to be live. And if the product doesn't work end to end, we're not going to consider it. And because it's possible now. And so now we're on the cusp of this next wave of, I really think we're going to see in 2024 and 2025 kind of an explosion of actual usable on-chain applications that are going to not just be copies of Web 2, but can be entirely new primitives and experiences that take advantage of the various layers of Web 3, from decentralization to permissionlessness to composability to trustless, all that kind of stuff, and brings it all together in applications that change people's lives. And I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that amazing conversation. And hopefully some of this advice makes a lot more new unicorns next year.
Thank you.
Please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Good.